So this is Peter Rabbit right here. He has a little tear under his arm. He has his fluffy ears. And he lost his little blue jacket. But let's put this back on him. So, this was a cute little gift that my daughter had gotten around Easter time. So, let's see, I don't think his coat buttons up. It probably was sewn shut and maybe somebody decided to rip it off. But here's Peter Rabbit. And we are going to read all about Peter Rabbit today. Okay? Okay, so today I have a little bit of company with me. I have my daughter here with me, and we are going to read a story together. Mostly I think I will be reading it, but she's going to read some parts of it too. This is the Book of Children's Classics, and there are a lot of good stories in here. I think I did read one from this book before. I read Madeline. But today we're going to be reading Peter Rabbit. Okay. So let's see here. Let's see which page Peter Rabbit is on. Page 211. Okay, so let's see, Peter Rabbit. I'm going to read this very quickly, and then we'll get to the story. Okay, so Peter Rabbit. This is all about Peter Rabbit. Okay. In September 1893, Beatrix Potter was on holiday in Perthshire, Scotland. 5-year-old Noelle Moore, the eldest of her former governess's children, had been ill. And to cheer him, Beatrix sent him a letter. My dear Noelle, I don't know what to write to you, so I shall tell you a story. The letter was 8 pages long and full of little pictures. Told for the first time, it was a story that was to become popular all over the world. The tale of Peter Rabbit. During the next few years, Beatrix began to earn a little money by selling designs for greeting cards and illustrating books. Her success at this convinced her to try to get her story of 4 little rabbits published. At least 6 publishers rejected Beatrix's manuscript before she decided to publish it herself. in a run of 250 copies in December of 1901. The private printing was such a success that Frederick Warne and Company agreed to reconsider the manuscript and decided to publish The Tale of Peter Rabbit if Beatrix would re-illustrate the whole book in color. The first commercial edition was published in October 1902, and by the end of December there were more than 28,000 copies in print. The Tale of Peter Rabbit is now a worldwide bestseller, translated into 30 languages, and a favorite of children and parents everywhere. So, a little bit about Beatrix Potter, born 1866 and died in 1943. She was the author and illustrator of the 23 storybooks known as the original Peter Rabbit books, as well as other stories for children. She was raised in London, but very early developed a keen interest in the countryside and the natural sciences. Her extremely accomplished scientific observation and illustration formed the basis for the detailed and accurate animal characters that populate her books for children. After the success of The Tale of Peter Rabbit, Beatrix was able in 1905 to purchase Hilltop, a farm in England's Lake District. Over the years, the Lake District became her permanent home, and she acquired several more properties, where she farmed and raised sheep. When she died in 1943, Beatrix left her land and farms to the National Trust. Okay. Okay. So, let's see. I'm going to read this page, okay? And then when I turn the page, you can read these parts, okay? Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out." Alright, so my little one is going to read from this page.
Then old Miss Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5
Currant
buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries.
Very good.
But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate.
Very good. Okay, you want to read this one too?
First he ate some lettuce and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes.
Very good. You didn't even need my help at all. Alright, so there is Peter Rabbit. Alright, let me read this one. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. But round the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" I'll read this one here and then you read these ones, okay? Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages and the other shoe amongst the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have got away altogether if he had not unfortunately run into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. Okay.
It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly
It's a kind of bird. Sparrows.
Who flew to him in great excitement.
Very good.
And implored him to exert himself.
Very good. Okay. Let's see how many pages here. Okay, just a couple more pages, okay? Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve. I don't know how to say that word. A sieve, which he intended to pop upon the top of Peter. But Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him, and rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not had so much water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. Presently, Peter sneezed. Can you make the sound of a sneeze? Yeah. Good. No. Just. You gotta do it. Achoo! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time, and tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of a window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to his work. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in that can. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity-lippity, not very fast, and looking all round. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone door step, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Oh, is he going to find his way home? Yeah. Okay, I'll read this page and you read this page, okay? Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. Do you think the cat would hurt Peter Rabbit? Yeah. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scritch, scratch, scratch, scritch. Peter scuttered underneath the bushes, but presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and behind him was the gate. Oh, he's going to escape. All right, let's see. Go ahead, you read this one.
Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could, go along a straight walk behind some black currant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside the garden. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds.
That's good. You don't even ever need my help anymore. You know all the words all by yourself. Alright, this is the last page. Alright, so I will read these ones. You read the very end, okay? Okay. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. I am sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter. 1 tablespoonful to be taken at bedtime.
But Flopsy Mopsy and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper.
The end. Did you like that story? Yeah. Do you know what happened?
Peter went out and with his other brothers.
Okay.
And then he got lost.
Okay.
I think he was out with his brothers, and then he got lost.
Yeah.
Then he was trying to find his way home, and then the last page he found his way home.
Yeah, he got lost. And did his mommy tell him not to run away like that? To try to have his crazy adventures?
I don't know, but the mom should tell him that.
Yeah, I think she did tell him, but he wanted to do it anyway. Because she said, "You're going to get in trouble." And he still just had to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But thank goodness he made it home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well that's it. Thank you for listening to us read this story.